Now this, as you know, I just said recently that you may want to get out of the market, right? Not may, I pretty much demanded you need to get out of the market. If you're not out of the paper markets, anything that's paper, you might want to get out urgently. Now, I'm going to start with the fact that several Webbot reports ago, a while ago, talked about how there would be a big, giant, so to speak, banking giant that would fall. It would come, just boom, out of nowhere, boom. Banking giant falls. We're all back then speculating, is it JP Morgan? Oh no, it's probably Bank of America. Nobody really said the word Morgan Stanley. It was like Bank of America, JP Morgan. So, lately I've been hearing a little bit about old Morgan Stanley. And if history's our guide, in Morgan Stanley, or some other entity, maybe it's not Morgan Stanley, some other big entity, but I think it may be Morgan Stanley, collapses, is JP Morgan going to get it for pennies on the dollar like they got the other ones that failed in 2008? I think Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns, or what was left of Bear Stearns or whatever. I think it was Lehman Brothers mainly. For pennies on the dollar. Stocks were trading like $150, $160 per share. Jamie Dimon gets them for like $2. And it was going to be cheaper than that to start with. They decided, oh, we'll just go ahead and give them $2. Interesting. So you don't suppose JP Morgan's in line for their lion's share raping and pillaging of a corpse of a soon-to-be large financial institution that will fail, looking like it's going to be Morgan Stanley. And I'm going to read you this. It's 2 pages, and there's a lot more to read. I will link to Silver Doctors where the whole story is at. But this is the gist of it. Jim Willie of the hat trick letter, the Golden Jackass or whatever, is writing this. This is where this is coming from. Willie states that Morgan Stanley faces imminent failure and ruin, that the older employees are selling all of their stock, and that many workers are making contingency plans for their next positions in another firm. He states that JP Morgan will devour the carcass, and the JP Morgan, the morgue, may be preparing to execute the first ever private stock account vaporization / rehypothecation / MF Global. Except this will be done to the private stock accounts. So get ready for MF Global 3 should this come true, and I think it will. Now it says this is an absolute must read. Begin with a preface to a meaningful event that could change the entire U.S. landscape. A redux of what happened 4 years ago. Consider the next Wall Street financial firm failure. It is in progress. It is not avoidable. It will have numerous ramifications. It will open the door to account thefts, the burial of documents, the ransack of undesired leverage positions, the concealment of wrecked derivatives, and a path towards the merger of surviving firms. So it will create a path toward the merger of those firms that survive their merger. It will urge an extreme defensive posture. Back in 2008, both Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers fell. The former because they had too much gold exposure with anti-US dollar hedges. The latter because they led in mortgage exposure. Both failures were greatly exploited. My favorite item was the reload given to JP Morgan on a quiet Saturday morning, convened at 6 a.m. nonetheless, at the bankruptcy court of Manhattan. The shadowy syndicate titan was handed $138 billion to handle the private accounts from the fallen banks. Instead, the funds represented a reload for JP Morgan to continue their gold suppression game. I'm going to add one. Gold and silver suppression game. Of course, they have been defending American freedom with vigor and preserving the integrity of the U.S. banking system and assuring the way of life in the nation while leeching billions from the public trough. Since their grant, the unassailable JP Morgan has seen fit to gobble private accounts at both MF Global, and PFG Best. With regulatory blessing, as the courts just recently said, they didn't do anything wrong. Nothing's illegal here. Customers, you lose. Your money's gone. In the background across the globe, numerous currency storm centers have arisen under the noises of every major central bank and their elaborate connected paper factories. The sovereign bond foundation is full of cracks and rotten planks upon which the entire global currency system rests. The only people who could have imagined such a grand mess in 2006 and 2007 were the sound money crowd. You know, the nutballs, the nut jobs, the conspiracy theorists, those without a clue, who maintain a myopic view of the world and see a conspiracy under every rock. Rather, we are the insightful, the alert, the rational, clear-thinking bunch, the guardians against hidden confiscation through inflation, the intrepid defenders of life savings. That's who we are. We identify the corruption and thus are discredited. Oh, this guy does videos in his car. This guy does videos with the fake green screen at home. He's a bozo. Don't listen to him. Listen to the expert on TV. He's the right guy. Gold will return to its rightful place as the core of monetary systems and trade systems all in time. The system is imploding at a much more rapid pace with each passing month. Man, is that true. Morgan Stanley implosion. The insider conversation, often called chatter when it becomes deafening in tone, is that Morgan Stanley faces imminent failure and ruin. Almost 2 weeks ago, the golden jackass provided a tip. Well, it just says the jackass. I'm assuming he means, or maybe Jim Willie or whatever. The jackass provided a tip to Bill Murphy of GATA to post on his popular Le Metropole Cafe that Morgan Stanley fund managers and high-ranking employees were preparing for the firm's implosion. Would that be insider trading knowledge? Hey, CFTC, SEC. Employees are selling their stocks. They know inside information. You may want to go after them. Because certainly you're not going to go after the account holders of those private stocks when they are raided and looted. A subscriber to the Hat Trick letter has a good friend whose father works as a fund manager and provided that story. He was not detailed and bore no follow-up after my request. The older employees are selling all of their stock, some legacy stock from 1 or 2 decades ago. Many workers are making contingency plans for their next positions in another firm. When Lehman Brothers was killed, thousands of employees had to find new jobs, some without success. In the last week, the shockwaves are being heard from internal Wall Street sources in an unequivocal manner. The implosion is in progress, like the collapse of several platforms and structural cables. The inside is caving in, and the ranking members recognize it, even talk about it openly. Much discussion swirls about a transition to antiquated software that is greatly disturbing their trading desks, causing tremendous problems at precisely the wrong time. A redux of the night capital disaster could be in progress. Some, like Rick Wiles of True News, report that Morgan Stanley is heading for the sacrificial altar. Such an event would imply an expected benefit hoped for and beseeched. My view is in parallel, but more of a harmful implosion that cannot be prevented, one that the Wall Street titans will face grand challenges to control, one they will not be able to exploit in the hidden corners where they operate. Morgan Stanley is going to the slaughterhouse, not the altar. The implosion will result from the lost control, and the reversion to antiquated systems will only hasten their demise. Wall Street will wish to exploit the failure, like stealing funds, like destroying documents, like concealing derivatives positions, like receiving government slush funds for slimy patch projects, their usual modus operandi. In criminal parlance, they will create a black hole into which things vanish. They will attempt to add to the confusion, which might itself backfire and deliver more lethal challenges to the entire U.S. dollar and U.S. Treasury complex. This time, the spotlight will shine brightly to reveal the activity in the shadows and crevices. The part that many analysts might miss is that Morgan Stanley has perhaps over 300,000 private stock brokerage accounts with over 17,500 brokers. In the past 2 decades, Morgan Stanley merged with Dean Witter and Smith Barney to become the premier stockhouse with the most private accounts of any U.S.-based stock brokerage firm. And I think they're going to get cleaned out. The Morgan Stanley failure might feature the first theft of private stock accounts. Might, he says, and maybe. He's right, maybe. Nonetheless, the giant is falling. But I think they're going to rape and pillage on their way down. I mean, history's our guide here, isn't it? Is it not? The critical jump might occur in an account theft the critical jump might occur in account thefts from futures brokerage to stock brokerage, which began in November 11 with MF Global, then appeared in July with PFG Best. So this will probably be MF Global 3, except a big one. All private accounts from MF Global to PFG Best have been pilfered, with a blessing of the theft by the courts, seen by the Sentinel Management Group ruling, in which the judge said, your stolen money is not stolen, it's that bank's. Have a nice day. The Federal Appellate Court's August ruling sets precedent for future private segregated account thefts, which were once considered sacred and untouchable. So if this ruling just took place, a few weeks ago, and we have a Morgan Stanley collapse a few weeks later, do you think by chance that court ruled in favor of the banks stealing your money at that precise time, so that as soon as anyone raises their hand right a few weeks later, if Morgan Stanley dives, hey, they stole my money, Morgan Stanley just did it too. See the appeals court decision and the other federal court that decided the same way. That's why they went to the appeals court, and the appeals court is pretty much the stop. Once they say no, you're pretty much done. They agreed your money's not stolen, even though it is stolen to you. It's not stolen. And we just got done ruling on a case by chance weeks before Morgan Stanley collapsed. So you can use that as an example. In other words, don't waste your time taking them to court. Don't waste your time. We're going to rule in their favor. You lose. Is this bad or good for precious metals? Who just got people, imagine the amount of people who get screwed if this happens with Morgan Stanley. And even if people don't get screwed and realize, holy Jesus, Morgan Stanley, giant, been around forever, just collapsed. Are you freaking kidding me? And every time I turn on the news and look at the Federal Reserve reports and the economy is slowly edging up and there's recovery and the banks they passed all the stress tests and that. Oh my God, I am being lied to left and right. Am I some kind of freaking idiot? I must be an idiot to sit here and listen to this and Morgan Stanley of all places just collapse. I've got to be an idiot. They'll quickly realize what the conspiracy theorists, the bozos like me, do. Precious metals. Precious metals. You can't mess with that. It's physical. It's in my hand. It's not a piece of paper. Even though a piece of paper sets the price. And because that piece of paper sets the price, you have a fire sale deal right now going on, by the way, you should urgently take advantage of and buy all the silver you can get your hands on. That's what's going to start happening left and right. No more in the United States. Not in the unfolding of criminality that stretches from U.S. government offices to top corporate offices, with blessings sprinkled down by the courts. The jump would be a major extension of the fascist business model, absolutely perfect phrase there, that nobody talks about. What is fascism? The merger of corporate and state powers. That is exactly what we have. The major financial firms can rely upon this appeals court decision or ruling as precedent, so as to protect their legal right to rehypothecate or steal client funds in their high-risk leverage positions in loans. It sure would be nice to use my neighbor's house and car to firm up my casino weekends. Stay tuned to the ongoing Morgan Stanley implosion, which could force the vanishing act of 50 to 100,000 private stock accounts. The firm is the largest stockbroker firm in the land. The dreadful impact will be nasty and might awaken the U.S. masses. Just maybe. MF Global and PFG Best surely has not so far. The masses are still asleep. Imagine the hue and cry from the poorly informed and poorly focused sheeple masses who have been quick to use the conspiracy nutjob labels when their stock accounts vaporize and rehypothecation made legal, as we just found out with the court ruling. Again, theft made legal. The zillions of IRA and 401 accounts that could also become collateral damage. Oh, what's that? You have a 401k account? You want me to stop reading now and tell you how to get out of it? I'll take a little pause, yeah. You have a job? Can't get out of it. Huh? Yeah. Do you have a job right now? You're working? You can't get out of it. Even though you know this is true, it doesn't matter. Can't get out of it. It was designed that way. It was designed long ago so that they could steal from you later on. And it's law. It's legal. Legalized theft. It's law. Don't you stand up and get mad. Don't you stand up and go kill somebody, some lawmaker or some banker. Don't you do that. It's legal. They ruled on it. Your guys you voted for, who told you everything you wanted to hear so you'd vote for them, then they got in office. Now that I'm in office, yeah, I know I said that. I changed my mind. Yeah, I know I told you I wouldn't do that. Changed my mind. Can't vote me out. Gotta wait. You're stuck with me for 2 years, 4 years, whatever. You're stuck with me. Sorry. And I voted on that 401k Act to be completed, signed into law. It's been in there since the 80s. Those guys are already retired. Those senators in Congress are already gone. We didn't know about it. We didn't really look at it. They've already, we don't go back and look at what other congressmen did. We just continue with business. So, they didn't break any laws. Sorry, you lost your 401k. Sorry about that. This has been the Golden Jackass warning for several months, largely unheeded. And same with old J Snip 4. If one is to search for a hidden impact from the Morgan Stanley implosion, look no further than their large gaggle of dangerous and highly deceptive interest rate swap control book, or contract book. They appear in the ledger items of interest rate derivatives in the usually ignored Office of Comptroller to the Currency Report, issued periodically. In early 2011, Morgan Stanley stuck out like a huge, iridescent purple thumb with their $8 trillion in new interest rate derivatives, believed to be 90% interest rate swap contracts. You see, that is precisely when the false flight to safe haven was engineered. The U.S. Treasury was in danger of rising, seen in January 2011 as the TNX went from 3.3% to 3.75% on a touch. Enter the powerful IR swaps run by the dark control room at trusty Morgan Stanley, and poof, the flight to safety was fabricated from artificial demand of U.S. T-bonds with no basis in tangible investment flows. The application of $8 trillion in interest rate swap contracts pushed by the 10-year U.S. Treasury yield from over 3.5% to 2% flat in the space of a mere 5 months. The sheep followed the Wall Street lead without knowledge of the IR swap heavy lifting. The U.S. government could not afford a bout with bond market reality in a relentless move to over 4%. On the all-important sovereign bond for the nation looking more and more third world that has corrupted the global reserve currency beyond recognition, while the annual 1.3 to 1.5 trillion deficits must be financed, along with the endless 1984-like war costs. If you're still in the market, and especially if you are in any way, shape, or form tied to Morgan Stanley, or in any way, shape, or form tied to anything else that would be affected by Morgan Stanley's implosion, which would probably be a lot of everything in paper, you may want to get out now. And if you want to know what you can do with your money, go buy precious metals and store them in your house. In a safe, not a piece of garbage safe from Lowe's or Walmart that says fireproof safe. Really, it's nothing more than a lockbox. You can cut right into it in about 5 seconds. I'm talking a real burglar-proof safe. $800, $600 used, $500, $400 used, Craigslist, etc. That kind of safe. Bolt it to your ground. That's where you need to store your silver. concrete floor, bolted down, etc. It's the only thing, precious metals, that will save you. And I think if Morgan Stanley falls, if this is true, because it might not be, but if it's true, and Morgan Stanley is the next one to go, and again, Webbot, there will be a big banking giant that falls. It'll happen practically overnight, and it's going to be devastating. It'll be shocking. I'm going to go try and find the report, because I don't know which one it was in, and I've got a bunch of them, and try to find the keywords that were attached to it. But from what I remember, it was like shocking, incredible, unheard of, middle of the night, you know, or just stuff like that. Just awe, shocking, whatever. Those were like the main keywords that I can remember, stuff like that. So it could be Morgan Stanley. See, back then we were thinking maybe it's JP Morgan. Oh, it's got to be Bank of America. It's probably Bank of America. Morgan Stanley wasn't really talked about. But right now, if this is to be believed, and I am leaning that it probably should be, it's going to be Morgan Stanley. And with it, it will bring down a lot of the financial system and the stock market. It may bring metals prices down because of the fact that they're set on Wall Street on pieces of paper. And you may have one last great buying opportunity. Otherwise, you may find the opposite takes place while the market crashes because of Morgan Stanley and all that. That gold and silver just get dumped in, just money flows right into gold and silver. And as much as they want to bring the prices down, they can't stop it because so much money is going into it. And again, into the paper part of it, setting it through the paper. No telling. But if you sit with physical gold and silver in your possession, it doesn't matter. You can wait it out, you can sit on it, doesn't matter. Whether it goes down or up a little bit, it doesn't matter. You can wait for it to finally go to $100, $200, $300 an ounce. Whether it went down from 30 to 20 first and then back up to 50, didn't matter. You still had the silver. If it was 30, where it's at now, and goes straight up to 30, 40, 50, whatever, it doesn't matter. You've already got silver. See how that works? So, that's all I got for you. Gotta go.